Jeff Meeks and Chris Austin invite you to watch your favorite sports event at the Batter's Box at 43 Hermitage Avenue in Nashville, Tennessee. The Batter's Box offers shuttle service to all Titans home games. It's a great place for friends to gather for the game and after the game. So check out the Batter's Box Bar and Grill, and thanks again for sponsoring the show. Bandwidth for today's show is brought to you by SoftLayer.com. We love SoftLayer here at Talkopolis. They are the greatest hosting company ever. They make everything easy. Check out their website at SoftLayer.com. Thanks again for sponsoring the show.
Microcasting for your city, Talkopolis.
And welcome back, everybody, to the final segment of Political Soup. That's right, segment. I got it right. You know where we're headed.
Not
guys,
episode.
No. Guys, one of the things, and this becomes a really emotional issue, and we've talked about it a little bit before, but gun control. And how exactly do we come to a point of gun control without overstepping the Second Amendment? The president has gone as far with Vice President Biden. I mean, the hints are all there that he may think he can sign an executive order and put certain restrictions on firearms. I own firearms, and I, on occasion, carry. It's everybody else's choice or responsibility to figure out when I do and when I don't. But
and you have a permit, I hope.
Yes. Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
Just checking.
Good point.
Unlike Curry Todd, who was drinking and carrying.
Yeah, that was. But they're already, and that's one of the points I'm heading with. They're already regulated to an extent. This thing gets to be such an emotional issue. What's it going to take to get this to a good, honest, open debate with a fair ending for everybody? Because not everybody's going to be happy, I grant you, but something that can work for everybody.
Well, one thing they're talking about, and I think we talked about this in one of our earlier segments, really one of the issues is mental health,
right.
And that we can talk about gun issues all we want, but until we have some serious addressing of that, we're not going to really get to the bottom of it. And part of what the vice president talked about was sort of making more extensive national background checks, ensuring that people who have mental illness don't have access to weapons. So that was a positive part of the discussion that the vice president had with members of the NRA and others.
Well, he's talking about anybody who gets a gun has to go through a national background check. And I found that to be kind of humorous, because that smacks of, let me say, racism on a high scale. If in fact a voter ID is racist, then a background check is racist. So it's the same. I mean, it's a background check. If you're going to register to vote and you have to have a background check and you have to have voter ID, then if that is in fact racist, which I don't think it is, I was tongue in cheek.
Well, the photo ID law, though, the photo ID law for voting was just it was addressing something that was not an issue.
But oh no, it is an issue. Fraud is it? Voter fraud.
There's hardly any voter fraud. It's like shooting a cockroach with a .45 with the photo ID law that we had. There was no serious fraud issues, and to basically what you were doing is it was a racist issue. You were disenfranchising African Americans and working people by requiring a photo ID.
Now wait a minute. Don't you have to have
we're off topic here.
No, wait. Don't you have to have a photo ID to pass a background check for a gun?
Is that what they've said?
Yes. So it's the same thing. So now you're saying that black people and Latinos won't be able to get a gun because they don't have a photo ID. Pick one, Chip. You got to be on one side of the photo ID or the other.
The photo ID issue, Crom, there are 120,000 seniors in Tennessee who have a driver's license who chose not to have their photograph put on it. And then they had to go to the motor vehicle department to get a government-issued photo ID. That's why that law, the photo ID law in Tennessee, was such a debacle. We were disenfranchising our grandmothers and grandfathers from voting because they chose to have a driver's license without a photograph.
But aren't those people then disenfranchised from exercising their Second Amendment right? If you force them to have a photo ID to get a gun.
Well, I guess you're right on that case.
Thank you. That's all I'm trying to say is so the vice president is way out of line requiring a background check. that includes a photo ID that makes you prove that you are who you say you are.
It's clear, though, that that's a solution, or at least moving in the right direction as a solution towards trying to weed out people with mental illness getting access to weapons. That's where we have to start. Now, what are all the details of the solution? Don't be looking at me with that smile,
I'm just glad that we can agree that photo IDs are reasonable requests on behalf of government for people to do certain things. Getting a gun is one of them. Voting is another. But if they have to have a photo ID for one, then they ought to be able to have a photo ID for the other. And I'm glad we agree.
Well, we agree.
and there needs to be a little leeway there. I don't necessarily agree with you 100%, but I do agree that, yeah, there's got to be some room there for the seniors who don't get out, can't get out. As long as that doesn't get abused, that's a good one for next week. We'll talk about that next week.
Now,
we're back on guns, though.
Yeah, I will say this. The issue, we had an assault weapons ban. It was in for 10 years. It didn't do much.
You don't think so?
Well, no. I mean, if you look at the number of deaths by these mentally ill people, they didn't go down in that 10-year period because it's such a small number. How often do we have one of these terrible incidences? Every 2 years? When it happens, it's terrible. But it's not like it's an everyday occurrence. And so the only point I'm trying to make is that you can pass a law that says you can't have assault weapons. You can pass a law, and we passed a constitutional amendment saying you can't have whiskey, but people got whiskey. We have a national law that says you can't have cocaine, but people get cocaine. So you can pass a law that says people can't get certain kinds of guns. They're already out there.
It was harder to get cocaine. It was harder to get whiskey. The idea is to try and minimize the access to it for people who are mentally unstable. It doesn't solve the problem. We're not talking about any of these laws or any of these solutions actually solving 100%. It just minimizes. It's like
I'm not, Chip, where you and I disagree is
it's like seatbelts. It's like seatbelts. We require people to wear seatbelts. Some people don't wear them, but they do have a positive impact on less fatalities on the road.
What I'm saying is that and I agree that seatbelts mean less fatalities. But I'm also
smaller magazines on guns, ban on assault rifles could mean fewer fatalities.
Well, we had that. What I'm saying is we had it for 10 years, and the mentally ill people they still exist. They still exist, and so the people who are mentally ill who are determined to shoot a bunch of people got them. And it's not that hard, just as it's not that hard for somebody who's determined to get cocaine to get it. It wasn't that hard during Prohibition for somebody who was determined to get alcohol to get it. Mentally ill people, if they are determined to shoot people, will be able to get the guns. So the issue is not the guns, the issue is the mental illness.
So here's my question. It's interesting. We approached this discussion, particularly you see the Vice President meeting and talking about this, and you're concerned about the sort of abridging Second Amendment rights. What is your answer to this tragedy we have in our country? What would you offer? Just status quo? Do we just kind of continue? Everybody can get a gun and do whatever they want? I mean, what are some reasonable solutions
I am for the background checks to get rid of, to be able to ascertain people who are mentally ill or who are criminals.
Okay.
I'm for that. I'm hoping that you're also for a background check and photo IDs for voting, but that'll be for another day. But we have agreed that people ought to have photo IDs. We've at least agreed on that.
For background checks for guns.
Okay, so I am for trying to keep guns out of the hands of mentally ill people.
So you support the Vice President, some of the Vice President's proposal?
I don't support the ban.
I understand, but some of what he's talking about, you do say some of that makes sense.
Well, yeah, but as long as I get to pick and choose the parts that I agree
I'm just trying to make sure that there's something you agree with.
But I'm also saying this: the President of the United States does not have the authority under the Constitution to sign an executive order outlawing assault weapons. Just simply doesn't. And the fact is that
there's a lot of debate about that, Crom.
Well,
there's some debate. It'd be interesting to see what he does. I mean,
okay,
it'll have to be challenged.
We had a law that outlawed assault weapons. Mm-hmm. It was passed by Congress and signed by a previous president. It expired. Right. A president doesn't have the authority under the Constitution to just say, okay, that was a law way back when. It doesn't exist now, so I'm just going to make it a law myself. I'm sorry, Chip. People can argue. People can argue all they want to on that, but that makes you really don't want that, because then a president that doesn't agree with you could say, you know what? When the founders wrote the Constitution, there wasn't electronic media. There wasn't television. There wasn't radio. There were newspapers. So freedom of the press will be limited to newspapers only, and I'm going to take over the TV networks. Would you like that? Do you think that would be a violation of the First Amendment?
Probably.
Okay, I think it would be too. And so the point I'm trying to make is that a president could say, yeah, but there wasn't TV back when the founders wrote the Constitution. And that's the logic of the progressives who say, well, there weren't assault weapons back then. Okay, I agree. There weren't assault weapons. So let's amend the Constitution, or let's pass legislation that comports with the Constitution and not just ignore the Constitution. Otherwise, you and I might lose our right to freedom of speech because some future president decides that freedom of speech as we view it doesn't apply now.
If it's that easy, why not send the bill outlawing assault weapons back through the House, back
Well, they're
through
talking
the
about
House?
It wouldn't pass.
Right. Well, they're
It
talking
wouldn't
about
pass.
doing that. Well, they may well do that. The president may call their hand on that. So.
Right. And I think that is an appropriate thing for everybody in the House and the Senate to vote on. I think the Democrat senators, I mean, Joe Manchin, the guy from West Virginia, he's the one that came out immediately. I mean, we're talking about like this, came out against clips, and then the next day he came out in full support for the NRA. Because in West Virginia, he all of a sudden realized that there are a whole lot more people in West Virginia that have guns and are law-abiding citizens who don't want their guns taken away by people that Joe Manchin himself doesn't agree with. So he walked that back very quickly.
Last comment. You get the last word?
I heard that, and that's Joe Manchin for you. He's always entertaining. West Virginia.
Actually, I think I'll get the last word. I think, guys, the thing that makes me wonder, they're so anxious to get rid of assault weapons and clips and all this, and Congress, as you see, even jumping in on it. I wonder if it has anything to do with their paltry 13, 14% approval rating. That they're kind of worried.
Is it that high?
Exactly.
Okay.
You know, hey, if all those guns are out there, I might be out of office quicker than we thought. No, just kidding.
Yeah.
Great. Great. I'll have Homeland Security at my door this afternoon. All right, gentlemen, you're going to the big party.
I am. Tomorrow afternoon, heading out and going to enjoy myself in Washington and watch the president be sworn in on Monday, and the parade, and then the inaugural ball that night.
The crowds have got to be unbelievable.
They are. It's an interesting experience. I wouldn't say it's a warm and fuzzy because you're with so many people and it's all jostling around, but it's history. Whether you're a Republican or a Democrat, it is a great moment to see how we transition so peacefully in our country. This was a re-election, but to see the president 4 years ago sworn in, it's just it's a great story about America that we so peacefully transition our government, and so to be a part of that is exciting. So I'm looking forward to it.
Best part is you may not agree, but it's done, and we're gonna live with it exactly as you say. We're gonna peacefully go. What do you be doing Monday?
Working.
It's Martin Luther King Day. You're not taking the day off?
Probably not.
It's a national holiday.
Well, I probably will still be working. I mean, I don't know what else I do in the middle of the winter. Maybe read a little bit, but I'll probably be working.
Yeah. If the forecasts are right, you may be shoveling snow. That's a whole other. Hey, you know what though? Tuesday or Wednesday, we'll be right back here. So next week, you'll have a chance to join us for one more edition of Political Soup. For Crom Carmichael and Chip Forrester, I'm Joe Williams. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you next time.